Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Professor, author, and broadcaster Nick Gowing.
Well, let me welcome you all as well, and I'm going to continue the spirit of Mr. Kushner, the spirit of trying to engage, and let me tell you what the aim of the next day and a half is. It's simple. What we're trying to do is create a basis and a foundation for discussion. There's really no grander intention than that. After all, there are many opportunities. Now they've got to be realized, but how long will it take? But what can we put now on the table? I'm going to be joined shortly by two leading businessmen to share their thoughts about what is possible and what can move forward. But this is about an exploration, and it is about an exploration of where things can go, assuming there is peace or at least stability in this region. When will that happen? Who knows when it'll happen? Gaining a better understanding of what possibilities there are for the Palestinians, for the Lebanese, for the Jordanians, and for the Egyptians as well. Improving the quality of life through investment and infrastructure as well, not just aid. 179 projects already detailed in this big program that we're here to consider. Issues of regional integration, issues of connecting people, of commerce and trade, the kind of things which are stifled at the moment. And the ask for you is simply to be positive, to share thoughts in a positive spirit. This is very much an economic discussion. It's not a political discussion. It's not about Jerusalem. It's not about peace. It is about what can happen when there's stability in the region. And I'm here in an independent capacity, along with other moderators, to try and make sure we can frame an understanding of what is possible in the spirit of what we've just heard from Mr. Kushner. So you can frame your assessments and test the viability of the economic plan and the options. And it is an economic plan only. There is expected to be some kind of political plan in a few months' time. So let me now invite our two first guests to discuss building a coalition for Middle East prosperity. The time is now. Let me ask Mohammed Alabar and also Steve Schwartzman to come to the platform. Welcome to you both. You're all both well known here in the region and globally as well, but what we want to do in the next half hour is explore how you as business people, leading business people, view the potential now and what you're going to invest in or what you might invest in or why you won't invest at all. But let me ask the question which we need to ask first of all. What's your reflection, Steve Schwartzman, of the fact that the Palestinian Authority chose not to be here?
Well, I'm not a political person, I'm just a business person. And I just listened to Jared's presentation, which was pretty remarkable. The idea that someone would take so much time and prepare something in such depth says something quite serious about the purpose of United States and also Jared as a person. And I look at this kind of presentation as something that an economic planner would look at and say, this could happen with the right circumstances. It won't with the wrong circumstances. But everyone needs a dream. And this is a very sensible type of dream. And one would have hoped that the beneficiaries of that dream might have been here. On the other hand, this has been 72 years, roughly, of complexity in this part of the world, and things don't change overnight. But to make change, you need to have a vision. And thinking about this, all 140 pages of it, which I actually read twice because I knew I'd be sitting up here,
Shall I just show how big it is?
Yes, and it's got all kinds of supporting stuff. That to make a dream come true for mothers in Palestine who want better outcomes for their daughters and sons, and fathers, who want to provide better for their families is normal, and it can happen. But as I think about, these other places where things have occurred, this whole region has exploded with growth since I've been coming here for 30 years. A lot of it powered by natural resources and the cleverness of the people. In Gaza and the West Bank, there are no natural resources. But there were no particular natural resources in Singapore. It's just a small island. It's got nothing. It's flat. But what it had was inspirational leadership. Lee Kuan Yew is one of the most unique people in the world. A country like Dubai, which lacked the resources of its neighbors, with large-scale resources, has made an enormous success. And all of that can happen. And this is like a first step, but it's a vision that I think should be accepted for a better life, and people will hear about this.
Let's talk about specifics in a moment. Mohammed Alaba, the fact that the Palestinian Authority has decided not to be represented here.
Well, the way I feel, and I think many of my colleagues in the audience feel as Arabs, the issue of the Palestinian and what project you might do, large or small, is something that's very close to our hearts. Every Arab. I really believe, of course, it would have been amazing to have everybody in one room. But every one of us, we are really Palestinian at heart, because it is, the Palestinian issue is our issue. So unfortunately, they are not here. It would have been amazing to have them, but I feel like I represent them, because it is my story. Palestine and its people and the Palestinian issues is something that's close to my heart. So I think today we really represent them in whatever needs to be done. And then again, many people ask me, and I say, all of us in this region, we're really people of hope, and we're a very optimistic bunch. We live in a very harsh environment, if it's really the desert or if it's the political scene in the region, and we get up every morning and we're positive and we want to do more. And you know what? It happens. It happens. So I'm saying it's unfortunate, but I think it's our duty to prove to them that there's something that's very serious, that good people behind this, and it has a good purpose.
All right, now let's get into the detail. Peace to Prosperity talks about envisioning extraordinary private sector investment in entrepreneurship, small business, tourism, and so on. It's a very long list. For you as investors, what do you need to be sure that you can put money in, it can be safe, and it can develop in the way that we've heard from the plan?
Well, you need a rule of law. That's very simple. We can't invest places where you don't have predictability of enforcement, courts, the normal kind of infrastructure you would expect, and that's a sine qua non where we go.
And your assessment now of what you see?
I wouldn't think that would be a reliable place to invest. Just by the way, this plan is not that financially ambitious. It's got $27 billion, for the Palestinians, and it's only about 20% equity. So it's not that much. It's like $5.5 billion. We've put at Blackstone more than $5.5 billion in a single investment, and this is for remaking a region. So I don't think that Jared has put together something that is unachievable and really requires enormous amounts of commercial support.
Mohammed, you are investing an enormous amount in this region, taking risks. What kind of risk do you assess there is currently in Gaza and the West Bank?
Well, of course, I'm a big investor with my group in Egypt, in Jordan, in Lebanon, and all these countries for the past 12 years. Now, if you want to talk about risk, as Jared said, there is no end to it. Risk and hard work and pain, which is continuous, but that's the business we're in. So if you tell me, and plus I'm from the Middle East, I'll come back and say, and many of my colleagues, they know that this is the region, but we know it better. It's easier for us to do business here rather than Southern California, where I get my master planning approved in 6 years, and I get it approved in Lebanon and in Jordan and in Egypt in 3 months. So in fact, I almost started a huge project in Toronto, and then acquiring the land. It's the land that Google is doing work on now. They told me that you need to go through 7 years of planning. I said, listen, at that time I was 50. By the time I get to build anything, I'll be 57. This is no deal. So actually, we closed our office and we're gone while we are making a lot of money out of the Middle East. So I'm saying that it is really easy to do business in the Middle East. But it's hard work. Of course, it's hard work.
And your assessment of the risk, though?
Well, what about the return? I don't want to do business in London where my return is, 4.5%. That's I'm out of business. I'm looking at environment where I'm making 25%, 35%, sometimes 50. I mean, certain areas I make 55% in the Middle East. Now, as I said, it's a lot of work, flying in and out. You have to know the mayor of this city, the mayor of that city, the mayor of Tangier. But it's doable and great opportunities. And remember, these are so-called developed economies, developed. They have not developed yet, so they need more of everything.
Now, we want to get by in the next 20 minutes to the point where we can work out whether the plan is achievable. An achievable plan is what it says about itself. The vision is within reach, but there are some specifics here. Look at the kind of language. Empower. The potential is blurred, and I'm quoting from the document here, by the absence of continuous sustainable peace and enhanced governance as well. Do you think the potential for that alone will in its own way create a new form of stability? Maybe not peace as such, but stability, which improves the investment climate.
What we find from investing all around the world is that great governments tend to have great countries and make it really the kind of place where you'd want to invest. And I think that's a challenge, not for the region, but for the Palestinian areas.
But one of the phrases here is the power to unlock from investment. Do you believe that is the case and could be and would be the case here?
Well, it's a little bit of we call it in English a chicken and egg. And I think you need both.
Unlock potential, Mohammed.
I think you need them both, but if you could give me a good environment where I can operate in, there's no limit what can be done, because with that good environment to operate in, you will automatically do business, you create employment, you create better life for people, people are optimistic, people are positive, and after that, it just rolls. Because there's a lot of other people who will be following us as we really put in the investment and it works. You create great environment, optimism, and everybody's positive about what we do. But you have to have these prerequisites.
So you're saying there is good justification for believing there's a causal effect between investment and creating a new environment where there can be greater stability, because that's an important thing to have clear right from the beginning. You're one of the biggest investors based in the United States, one of the top 5 companies.
Yeah, well, you have to have those preconditions of rule of law and the ability to trust what people tell you. It's the same all over the world, and it's not controversial. You have to deliver that. And if you don't deliver that, you can't attract large-scale capital. You can't attract institutional capital, which we mostly manage, and even brilliant, I would say, entrepreneurs like Mohammed would be reluctant to go to a place like that. And these are things that either get solved or they don't. The people have to want those kinds of outcomes because it gets them something. The plan gets them a better life, and they're going to have to deliver a mechanism to create confidence for outsiders.
Mohammed, with those you're dealing with and those you would like to deal with, do you believe there's an understanding and acceptance of this causal relationship between investment and the potential, which is far greater than we have at the moment?
I think everyone our group invest with, we're across 17 countries. They all believe in that, and they've seen it working as well. But again, it must be the right environment for really to come in, and then people will follow. But if I might say one thing, that we as Arabs, you have to know one thing about us, is that the most brilliant minds are the Palestinian minds. And for me, if you have a brilliant mind, you solve 90% of your problem. So let's enable them and let's motivate them the right way, because we've got good material to play with and to work with.
Do you think this kind of a discussion, even though there are those who are not here, in its own way can act as an inspiration to overcome the enormous legacy of geopolitical realities at the moment?
I think for us to get together and get people in the room, that's just an amazing opportunity. I guess maybe I'm just a positive human being like many of these people who come here, but that's the business. That's why we wake up every morning, so it's the beginning of something that I'm sure will get us somewhere. And I know that there's serious people in this room behind this gathering.
Geopolitical realities.
So an area with 30% unemployment is not really sustainable as an appropriate place to live. And it's hard to know what breaks an impasse, but if you have a vision that you don't have to have 30% unemployment, you don't have to have huge amounts of deaths on birth and all kinds of other issues. It seems to me logical, though the situation may not be logical, seems to me logical that over time people are going to respond to a better life. Who would not want a better life? I mean, whether it's the World Bank or other people in the room, as well as some of the great sovereigns, spend their lives making better lives for their people.
That's key. I like that. I like better life.
This area should at some point, now I'm not a political expert to know when that point's going to be, but at some point people should respond to that.
I'd like you to tell the story of what you've seen elsewhere, because what I find, certainly in my work, is that it's case studies, it's examples which can really inspire, as opposed to just numbers on a spreadsheet, particularly your example from Serbia. And after all, 25, 30 years ago, that was a region at war. Yes. It was devastated. I was there for 5 years. And the stories you're telling me now about the kind of dramatic change which can happen based on investment.
And imagine, we are at the time we took the green light to invest, GDP was -1. But the old railroad station, 200 acres on the river, was unbelievable. I was emotional about real estate, emotional about human life. But by the time we cleaned the river, while we're doing the master plan, we cleaned the river. We put a bicycle path. We put walking path, landscape, and we dropped containers in for quick F&B. That's all we did at the beginning, because we're busy doing the master plan. And you see people walking, and you say, something is happening. And people still don't believe, because, don't believe that this project will happen. By the time we delivered the first buildings, still people said, maybe these people are serious. After 5 years. So I think all of us, we have to be realistic. It takes time. And today, of course, doing well. But what's amazing is that people automatically moved with us. They are positive. They're running around with their kids. They're smiling. 50% of our business is the 4 million Serbian overseas putting their money back in their country while we're doing business in there. Number of investors who followed us when we announced our $2 billion investment and we start hitting the ground, the number of people who followed to come with us. That's why Belgrade every year gets about 45% increase in tourism year on year for the past 4 years. So, as you rightly said, people want a decent life. They just want to participate in something good. But the issue with the Middle East, which is much better than Serbia, is that the Middle East is 60, 70% are young people. They're looking at their screens. They want to be part of this. I don't think they're involved in politics. They want a better life.
We're going to be
That's
looking
why I'm optimistic about the gathering, the young people in the region and what they are asking for.
and much of that will come out in the discussions tomorrow. But when you look at that video, which is only 2 minutes, but a lot of transition taking place, literally places which are seen as down,
Yes.
but suddenly being translated.
amazing.
I picked up on that, having seen it before you mentioned to me about Serbia, because of what you've just said about what can be achieved
No, in
and the
Egypt-
dramatic impact.
But look at North Egypt. You know, we are lucky enough. We have a 60 million square feet site, and we've got one inside Cairo. If you go into their sites and you say, is this Beverly Hills or is this Cairo? But look at the people on the street. Look at their faces. Look at the smile, their pride. They have something to lose. Something to lose, very important for all of us, right? We have a stake in this. And other people follow. Investors follow. Other good people follow. And I think, you know, it's our duty also. It's not only the investment, but to promote the concept, to promote the purpose of what we are trying to do. Especially for us as Arab. You know, the Palestinian issue is the core of, it's a part of our DNA.
The social catalyst there from investment, even though some are suspicious about what investment is about, that social catalyst, Steve, about what can be achieved by investment and the transition in the minds of people, particularly for the next generation who are hungry for opportunity.
Well, you know, infrastructure is like a really important thing. We were involved in Uganda providing 40% of the electricity there through a hydro project. The ability to empower people by just having simple things we don't even think about. They're virtually invisible to us. You know, that's where you start. You know, sort of like a great backbone for communications and internet and connecting people to the world. You know, there are all kinds of ways that you start. We did some interesting things in Poland, probably around 15 years ago, where, you know, you could just see the people who wanted to have better lives. And they were quite focused on it. And, you know, no government is perfect, but from where they came from, it was exciting to watch that.
One of the extraordinary hopes on page 17, we believe we can achieve a World Bank rating of 75 or better. Do you believe that is possible? Because when I look at the kind of language which I see on page 4, and I'm going to quote here, a thriving and integrated economy, an empowered and prosperous people, an accountable and agile government. Easy to put that in, if you like, a proposal document. But do you believe something like that is really achievable?
Well, I wanted to say, before you ask me this question, I wanted to tell you that what made us really fly through some of these countries, and especially in Serbia, is that you should see how the government behaves. I mean, these people are like a driving one of those W12 machines. They're fast, they're efficient, they're clean. So I must say that not only we did a good job, but the government have done an amazing work to enable us to produce. So I would say it's doable if you've got a good partner and you've got people on the ground who are really serious. And I always vote for young government boys and girls to run the show and really from the heart. Of course,
is age important in this?
I like age because I run a very large, with my colleagues, an e-commerce company that doing amazing stuff in the region. And they amaze me every single morning. So yes, young people, they're educated, they're smarter than one of us. That's why I always travel with my son, because I always need advice and I lean on him.
Well, I'll wait for the next question.
But thriving integrated economy, empowered, prosperous people, accountable, agile government, these are very sound aspirational words.
Well, but that's what you need everywhere in the world. You know, for example, even a place like New York, with a mayor like Mike Bloomberg, and you're still seeing what he's created with new universities, buildings going up all over, reinvigoration of the city, one person. So when I said earlier that one person is needed to drive this kind of reimagination of a country, of a region. One person can do it. There are people in this region itself, in the Middle East, the heads of a lot of the countries are driving, to make their countries better, a better life for people. And everybody here knows, what's going on in that regard. And it's that drive that creates these big buildings and sort of museums and all kinds of remarkable things that have happened. I mean, since I've been coming here, it's only been 30 years, I guess, a little less than 30. Riyadh has grown 7 times. I mean, people think it's just there. I mean, 7 times. What kind of place grows 7 times? That's, sort of, people think it's been there for thousands of years. And you can do this with each country providing unique leadership, which they do in this region. It's very dynamic here, and there's no reason why that should not carry over.
Now, there's a particular point here on page 8 about how you don't need a Marshall Fund for this kind of thing to happen. You need investing. You need private investment. And indeed, much of the investment, as we heard from Mr. Kushner earlier, is going to be significantly less than the amount of aid that's spent at the moment. Is that a good principle in your view, that it doesn't require that kind of level of, like the Marshall Fund after World War II?
It's 20% equity. It's not that much money. I mean,
Totally.
I hate to say things like that. They
Totally
get
agree.
recorded and somebody says, well, seems like a lot of money to me as a person, which it is as a person. But taken in the context of a global economy, 27 billion and, putting up $5 to $5.5 billion is that's a good sized project that you'd be financing at the World Bank. It's not that much money. And that's what surprised me about the plan. There's so many applications of those funds because you've got 80%, sort of soft money on top of it. And you can because the base is so low, there you can really, put a lot of things in as Jared's plan shows. So this type of transformation is financially doable. It's a question of whether there's will to do it.
We've got 5 minutes left. Let me challenge you now. What can fly fast? What could move quickly if suddenly there was a significant breakthrough, allowing these kind of opportunities to emerge? How quickly do you believe that the private sector could act in a way which probably governments can't?
Myself, if we get a green light, we get people who are really facilitating the whole process, I think you'll be shocked of the amount of interest and amount of money beside the numbers we were talking about. Because, as I said, as an Arab, I know that every single Arab want to contribute and want to support. So it will really fly fast, but provide a good organized structure. Whatever that structure is that it's agreed on between all the parties, I'm telling you, 400 million Arabs, there's a lot of them who want to participate.
Steve, the speed at which this could be done.
I think there's a proof of concept needed. You'd first have, the inspirational entrepreneurs like Mohammed. You would need, disproportionate money and guarantees, from the World Bank or IMF. People would, I think, at least from the West, be very cautious at the beginning. And as they see it roll out, they'd come in if the return is there. And the safety. First, it would be safety. You'd have to have somebody underwriting this risk, who of course thinks there's not much risk. Otherwise, they wouldn't underwrite it.
What about two or three practical problems at the moment? The fact that it's the mobility between Gaza and the West Bank is very limited. Getting material into Gaza is particularly almost impossible for most people, as you've discovered. What about the need for that to be overcome very speedily? And secondly, what is mentioned here in the document about creating growth opportunities by improving access to strong neighboring economies. Strong neighboring economies, still that obstruction, that limitation, that friction that exists. How much would that be critical in making judgments as a businessman?
I think, unless I have the plan wrong, Jared, there's a road going between the two. This is what happens when you read 140 pages. And so that's a mechanism. And obviously, you know, it's really hard to have an economy that's completely bottled up. You know, economies like exports need imports. And so that would be over time, I think, something that would need to occur.
I mean, you'll have to do the link, which might take 2 years or 3 years, but I think immediately if the parties, they will have some type of an agreement, then you can just open up Gaza a little bit. If, you know, how you can open that, is that through a port, through Egypt, and once you open that up and you know you release the pressure from the West Bank while you are building infrastructure, you can still do work within these two territories ASAP.
But in your mind, are these significant constraints which would act as a kind of anchor chain?
Today, I mean, the infrastructure between the two locations, I don't think it's an issue today. I think opening up the territories for people to come in and for basically material to come in and out, or opening Gaza across to Egypt, for example. You know, 10 years ago, I did the first master plan on the waterfront of Gaza. You know, my engineers, they were sleeping on the border for 2 nights. Thank God they are Chinese, Singaporean crazy guys who can sleep 2 nights on the border to get in and do the master plan. But you need to facilitate all that while you're doing the infrastructure between the two parts.
Right. In the last minute, your idea of where the Palestinians could be at high speed, literally within a year or two, if suddenly things were to change dramatically based on the calculations you make as a leading investor?
I think the world would be overjoyed if things changed politically, and this issue could just simply be normalized like the other places where, you know, we for the most part operate, and so you'll need a political change, I think, to make that happen, to have that great inspirational leadership that brings along a population that logically should want a better life for their children.
Mohammed.
If there is a positive change, and again, positive change is a big word, I think you'll maybe I'm just too optimistic, but you'll really be surprised, because we're dealing with young people who really would like to be part of the good life, whatever that is, but I'm sure it's positive, and I think the velocity of change could surprise you.
Good. Well,
Positively.
Thank you both very much indeed. What we've done is we've opened the door to significant perceptions of what can happen if things move in the right direction. Let me tell you what's going to happen shortly. There'll be dinner. There'll be 2 dinners, one for the main guests and officials over the other side of the corridor here. And for the media, it'll be downstairs in the Kitchen Bay restaurant. Tomorrow morning, we have Madame Lagarde speaking on a panel in conversation with Tony Blair and Jared Kushner as well. A session moderated by Secretary Mnuchin as well, and Sheikh Salman, featuring all the ministers of finance who are here. But can I thank very much Steve Schwartzman and Mohammed Alabar.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.